Okay.
All right.
Everybody got their notes out? Woo! Here we go.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about plastic pollution, and specifically, I probably won't get a chance to tell you about what I'm doing in Presque Isle Bay, but I want to just give you a little kind of state of where things are at in terms of plastic pollution. So has anyone seen this documentary? You can find it on Netflix. I will get, I'll bring back to the class, I have some handouts, or I can just email them to you, just to kind of, some of the information that I have here. You can find a lot of it online. There's a great documentary that you can find on Netflix called Addicted to Plastics, and nobody's seen it? All right. Okay, I started playing this before, so here we go.
I was addicted to plastic.
Plastic.
Plastic, man, go on.
Everything in my life had become disposable, and it led me on a 2-year odyssey around the world.
I think plastic is a fabulous material that can do all kinds of things.
The plastics of today are not the plastics of your grandmother.
It's beautiful. You can buy almost everything in plastic. And you say, oh, this is nice.
Does industry lie? Absolutely. It will do anything to protect its profits.
We see as a plastic bottle. This is easily 4,000 miles from the Asian coast.
There are more things that we don't know than that we do, and it frightens me just a little bit.
We feel the landfills are going to be the oil wells of the future. We'll be mining them to get our plastics to feed Cool Blue and other technologies like Cool Blue.
As long as those pots can be recycled or get here to our facility, that circle can go around and around and around for a long time.
Here we have a 100% recycled plastic jacket.
We're taking the protein from chicken feathers and making this plastic.
If it gets washed away or ends up in the sea, then it will dissolve instantly. It's non-toxic, so it's not going to hurt anybody.
That would be a very nice environmental story.
So as a society, we are addicted to plastic. So I'm going to tell you kind of a story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, and again, I might flip through some slides because I'll realize they're ones that I'm not going to take the time to talk about. Plastics, when you see plastics, you might see these symbols, right? They're recycling symbols. I'm a chemist, so this is what I see. I see structures, right? So structures are important because structure affords function. That's something we talk about in science all the time, is that the structure of these molecules is what affords their function, and that's a good, because for plastics, their chemical structure affords them valuable properties: strength, durability, resistance to degradation. And so that's important for making things like artificial joints, or especially for safety things, bicycle helmets, car seats, all kinds of things that are useful for us in our daily life. So there's a lot of goods about plastic. So I don't want you coming out of here feeling like plastic is a 4-letter word or something that's not good. Plastics serve a lot of important functions in our world. But there is the bad and the ugly. And this was a picture that's actually from the 1955 issue of Life magazine, and it's called Throwaway Living. And the idea was, hey, isn't it wonderful? Like, we don't have to spend time in the kitchen anymore. We can just throw all of this away. And so for a while, we had to deal with fixing the litter issue, right? Because people would just throw things out into the environment. And now people are at least being responsible, and they're putting things where they're supposed to go or where they think they're supposed to go. But we'll talk about some of the fallacies of recycling in just a little bit. But if you think about it, this was from 1955. Plastics haven't been around that long. Really, only maybe about 75 years. So again, August 1st, 1955 cover of article in Life magazine. So here's some of the bad, right? That same statement, the chemical structure of plastics affords strength, durability, and resistance to degradation. That's also an unfortunate thing, because the garbage of 100 years ago looked like this, right? I don't know if any of you compost or you know somebody who composts. Most of what we made 100 years ago was biodegradable. Unfortunately, this is what the garbage of today looks like. It's largely not degradable, and even if it is degradable, even if we have materials in there that are degradable, they tend to be buried so deep within a landfill that it's almost this protected, sterile environment. Nothing can break it down. So modern day litter is truly no longer biodegradable. Even if there's biodegradable materials in there, unfortunately, it frequently never makes its way to an environment that can allow it to be degraded. And our footprint in this is huge. So somebody take a guess. How much, on a daily basis, how many pounds of waste does the average American consumer produce? Somebody take a guess. Be brave. Yes.
20 pounds?
20 pounds. You know, and everybody, they overestimate. 4? All right. Pretty good. 4.5. When people say 20 though, then it's like, oh, you know, my punchline is, it doesn't have as much punch, right? It's not, oh, only 4.5. But that's on a daily basis. If we think about how much waste that accumulates on an annual basis, that's a lot, right? And so not only is our footprint in this huge, it's really huge compared to the rest of the world. We produce so much waste. And plastic waste is growing exponentially. So again, don't worry too much about the data that's presented in this plot, but this just shows as a function of time the amount of plastic that we, or waste that we are producing in terms of, I think this is tons of plastic. But anyways, what we can see is even though we are increasing the amount of plastic or waste that we're producing, plastic is increasing at an exponentially greater rate. And so plastics is becoming this huge problem for our landfills. And not only is plastic, as we just saw in that graph, increasing dramatically, plastic waste is a major component of our landfills. And so here we can see plastic waste disposal in the United States. Most of plastic waste is landfill. Only 6% is recycled. And again, I'll talk to you a little bit about the fallacies of recycling in just a minute. But if we look at kind of a composition of after things are recycled or composted, what comprises kind of a lot of our waste, and there's a lot of plastics that are there, you know, a lot of food waste, things that could be composted, things that are biodegradable that are finding their way into our waste stream. So even attempts of recycling of what we throw away, you know, a lot of what we throw away is potentially recyclable. So even after people think they've taken out stuff that's recyclable, there's a lot that's still potentially recyclable. Plastics, mostly are used for packaging. If you think about every time you touch something that's plastic, and just think about this as you kind of go out today, every time you touch something, just ask yourself, is this plastic? That one video that we watched in the beginning about addicted to plastic, this guy actually tried to get rid of everything in his life that was plastic. And it's kind of a funny thing, at the end, he's just like, he's left with nothing. Like almost everything, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And I'm not saying it's bad, but so much of it is just used for packaging. It's a once and done thing. And I see you're looking at your water bottle right there, right? It's packaging. So again, almost all of the plastics discarded in 2010 in the United States were used for packaging. You know, it's not the safety bike helmets and all that stuff. It's just a once and done plastic. Think about the next time you buy something from the store and you have to wrestle to open it because there's so much plastic that's there. So again, another little graphic that just kind of shows the millions of tons of plastics as a function of time. And the green line kind of shows plastics that are recovered, that are recycled, that we're kind of reusing those materials. And then here again is plastics that are being generated. So as there's this giant divide between the amount of plastics that are generated and the amount of plastics that are recycled, where is the rest of that gap? And that's trash, right? If we're producing so much more, but we're recycling not so much more, unfortunately the rest of it just means it's going in the garbage. All right, so we had the good, Plastics are good. I don't want you to think that plastics are awful. Their structure affords important function. That structure that affords that function also is bad because, you know, it leads to their persistence. And so again, this chemical structure, the ugly of it is that their strength, their durability, and their resistance to degradation means they stick around forever. And we don't see pictures like this in the United States, right? Nobody looks in their backyard and sees something like this. And unfortunately, this is what is the norm for many other places in the world. And we'll talk about what those places are and why they look like this in just a little bit. But there is an ugly side to plastic. The fact that it sticks around and it persists for so long. So I kind of titled this slide, Structure Affords Dysfunction. The idea is that, you know, we have these things, especially things like plastic bags and straws and things like that are meant to be just used once, but they persist, 10 to 20 years for plastic bags. Styrofoam cups, 50 years, right? Disposable diapers, 450 years. You know, these things persist in the environment. A lot of the main culprits that we see here, these are the top 10 items collected by a marine beach cleanup. And you can see things like, I'm going to talk about some of these, plastic bottles, grocery bags, and straws, okay? And so part of what I want to impart to you guys is there are simple consumer choices that you can make that can really help with this problem. So again, structure affords dysfunction is particularly problematic for plastic bags, right? The fact that they are meant to be very light, so you can pack a whole bunch of them together when you put them in a box to ship off to a grocery store, so that people aren't having to carry these heavy bags with their groceries, unfortunately, makes them very airborne. So they're a huge waste problem. Our babysitter actually made, with my kids, it was kind of cute, made kites, right? But I'm like, this just highlights the problem of this. They are so easily airborne. Our attachment to plastic bags is huge. Another guess with a number. I'm not going to have you guess because you're going to ruin my punchline, right? All right. How many bags do you think the average consumer uses in a year? So just think about, all right, every time I go to Walmart or to Giant Eagle or to Wegmans, give them those bags. You're going to ruin my punch. What are you going to say? 100,000. You think the average person uses 100? All right. Now that's even worse. Because that 500.
Is it?
Just me, you.
Oh, average. Okay.
Average person. Okay. So how many bags do you think? You don't think you use 100,000 bags in a year, do you? That's a lot. Then we'd have a bigger problem than we do. 500. Okay. But that's still, if you think about that, that's more than a bag a day. Right? And again, our attachment to these bags is huge. I mean, you go into the store, they use a bag if you get like a little pack of gum, I put it in a bag for you. No, you don't put it in a bag for that, right? So one shopper one year, this is the bag monster. This person, in terms of advocacy, decided they wanted to go out and they put a costume on with 100 plastic bags. And that was their way to show people, this is how much you produce in terms of plastic waste in a year. Okay, so that works out to 45,000 bags in the average consumer life. Lots of bags, right? Oh, that's my son. He actually did a little science presentation on this a couple years ago. So I'm going to show you another little movie. Anyone seen Plastic Paradise? This one came out more recently. I don't think this one is on Netflix, but I actually have a copy of this, so Jody, if you wanted to have it, if anybody wanted to see, I'm happy to share.
We could always run it while they're working on their...
Sure. I mean, even just to have, just things that you're hearing or so forth to watch. But another little movie just to kind of show.
There's a dead bird over there.
See if there's anything in there.
Oh. Oh my gosh. Oh, gross.
We see a piece of plastic there.
Oh.
And there's a bigger piece of plastic coming out. Here you have a bird that was alive potentially yesterday, and you look inside, and it's just like night and day. And this is an average amount of plastic in this chip.
Plastic, plastic, plastic. Something new, a resin which can be molded by heat and pressure to any shape.
At the dawn of the 20th century, science invented synthetic plastics, and the world would never be the same.
There are plastics in your toaster, in the blender and the pot, in the lamp and in the roaster.
Today, everywhere we go, we are surrounded by plastic. We drink from it, eat from it, wear it, and use it in almost every part of our daily lives. This miraculous invention and its evolution have created a new era of cheap, convenient, and disposable products that have transformed the way we live. And it's hard to imagine what we would do without them.
Plastics is too firmly embedded in modern life.
But plastic is unlike any other substance on Earth for one very specific reason. It never goes away.
What happens to plastic when it gets thrown away?
Forever doesn't degrade.
Well, I've never seen it disintegrate. Where do you think it goes when you throw it away?
Nowhere. Never goes away.
Do you know what plastic is made out of?
Plastic? Oh no.
They melt it down from something.
Any guesses what plastic's made out of?
Well, yes. Does it belong to the animal kingdom? The vegetable kingdom? No. Then it's just gonna belong to the mineral kingdom. It's not a mineral either. Oh, it's a symbol.
Maybe this little thing will belong to a kingdom all of its own. The fourth kingdom. The kingdom of plastics.
Plastic?
Because plastic is such a perfect creation, it's virtually indestructible. Which means that almost every molecule of plastic ever created is still somewhere on this planet. So if it never deteriorates, where does it go?
Have you heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
No, I haven't.
No.
The Great Pacific Garbage. What?
Has anyone heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Just one? What have you heard about it?
Is it like a 3-mile trash thing in the middle of like the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean?
Now my punchline will fall. It's bigger than 3 miles. It's about twice the size of Texas. Okay? And it's not this floating iceberg of trash that people think about, right? The oceans have what we call gyres, which are cyclic currents. And so what happens is, much like in a swirling, drain, you'll have stuff that kind of collects in the middle. The same thing happens in the oceans. And so a lot of plastic makes its way out into these gyres. And so there's an organization called 5 Gyres, great website to provide information from. But this is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch out here. There's other garbage patches and other gyres. But they have dedicated themselves to witness plastic pollution decline in the environment until it is no longer found in the world's oceans. So that's kind of their goal. Again, in 2009, the New York Times commented on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. In a remote patch of the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of miles away from any national boundary, the detritus of human life is collecting in a swirling current so large that it defies precise measurement. And as I just mentioned, this tends to be something that is believed to be roughly twice the size of Texas, so huge. Again, it's not this giant iceberg. It's not like a floating landfill or something. What really is found by and large in these large patches are tiny pieces of plastic. So what happens after months and months and things make their way out there is nature does break things down. But unfortunately, it breaks them down into small pieces. We call these microplastics. And microplastics are even more problematic because they look like food. Okay? And so smaller fish eat this. They think it's plankton. And so there's a lot of different problems that come from this. You have contaminants and pollutants that can adhere to these small plastic pieces, and then they're ingested by these smaller fish that are consumed by bigger fish, and so forth. So microplastics, I'm going to flip through some of these slides kind of quickly here. The idea is that there's these small pieces of plastic that often are intentionally put in. Microbeads, in California just passed an ordinance that they have banned microbeads. Counties in New York State have started to do the same. If you flip a bottle over, if you have anything that's kind of a scrub or kind of an abrasion, if you see polyethylene on the ingredients label, that's plastic. The only reason it's there is to kind of serve as an abrasive, as an exfoliant. And the problem with this, there's 36,000 of these microbeads in one little tube of this. They're so small that they're not filtered out by the wastewater treatment plants. And so they just end up out in our waterways. Right? When people first started looking at plastic pollution and they were seeing these tiny little perfectly spherical pieces of plastic, didn't know exactly what they were first until they started realizing, oh my gosh, they're coming from this that's going right through the wastewater treatment.
How many, what ounce is that bottle?
4.2 ounces. And so from 5 Gyres, they kind of talk about that they see these microplastics as one of the most egregious sources of plastic pollution, because this plastic is actually designed to be washed down the drain. It's designed to just go right out into the environment. And oftentimes it's not even there for an exfoliant purpose. Oh, let me just comment first. Just because you see something that's an exfoliant, don't think it's bad. There's plenty of ones here that have natural sources, biodegradable sources of exfoliants. Burt's Bees uses apricot shells. This one over here, Palmer's uses cocoa beans. So just because something's an exfoliant doesn't mean it's bad. You have to get away from the marketing side, which I'm sure you guys are very good at creating things for. Get to the information side. Get to the ingredients, like where the information is. So turn the bottle over. So this was something just from my lab that we looked at. There's polyethylene in this. And in this case, it's not even necessarily an exfoliant. It's just there for color, you know? It's just there to make it look pretty. So again, not necessarily useful stuff. So the question is, are there other waterways that might do this? And so this is where my research comes in, is looking at these plastics in Lake Erie. I gotta play my little Debbie Downer noise. Oops. Aside from really being a Debbie Downer, right? Just all this like negative information. So what I want to do in the last couple minutes here is just turn this to something positive for you guys, okay? And I'm just going to kind of flip to a summary slide because I'm not going to have time to go through all of this. I had like a whole workshop that I did with this, and so there was a lot of information. But I want to empower you guys with ways that you can help with this problem, right? It's your turn to lead. I gave this talk the first time back in the spring when it was right before Earth Day. You guys have heard of the 3 main R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. I want to teach you about 3 other R's: refuse, repair, and redesign, okay? So the reduce, reuse, recycle stuff that you guys have heard about for a long time. I'm going to just kind of skip to a few slides here and kind of summarize fallacies of recycling. You guys, we talked about at the beginning, there's all those numbers that are on the bottom of your plastics, right? In reality, the United States really is only effective at recycling numbers 1 and 2. It's wonderful when you feel like, hey, I live in a community that we collect all the numbers. That's really great. But unfortunately, most of those plastics aren't even recycled here. Do you guys know where those plastics go? China. Flip ahead here. Yes, China, India. They buy it from us. I'm going to just show this quote real quick. Pollution is nothing but the resources we are not harvesting. We allow them to disperse because we are ignorant of their values. Buckminster Fuller was a famous chemist. But the idea is we don't see the value in that waste, right? We're just interested in getting it out of our environment. So we sell it to other companies. And they use it, right, as in their reprocessing facilities, largely in China, India, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Okay, so all our plastics kind of go over, and when we buy something that says made in China and it's plastic, it's probably because they've recycled our raw materials. Anyone heard of Operation Green Fence? So the idea is, a couple of years ago, China implemented some strict regulations on what they were going to allow into their country. No dirty scraps, only high-grade recyclables. Now they only want the numbers 1 and 2. They don't want the 3s through 7 anymore. 1s and 2s, because of their chemical structure, are easier to recycle and reprocess. So again, this is a problem because most American recycling centers cannot recycle 3 through 7. Previously, we relied on China and India for this. So currently, the solution is we're foregoing recycling efforts for these plastics, and we're basically diverting them into landfills. Almost like, you know what, we're gonna just sweep this under the rug right now, and maybe we'll get to clean up later. But unfortunately, until it becomes cost effective to do something about it, I don't think we're going to do anything about it. So a real focus on recycling innovation and sustainable design could boost Western recycling industries and economies. It could be a huge way to kind of create jobs and all kinds of stuff in the United States to find a way to repurpose this, right? And I've watched these videos so much, I know these quotes in my head. But in the first video we watched, there was somebody that was talking about something called Cool Blue. And they talked about kind of getting stuff out of landfills. And this is a company in the United States that is taking waste materials from landfills, and they're making it into carpets and rugs, okay? This is a process that we call downcycling. I had a slide here, I'll flip back just to a second. Downcycling. So downcycling is unfortunately what happens to most recyclables. When you put something in your little blue bin or your green bin and you're like, I'm recycling. Sort of. It's being made into a product that's of lesser quality, and they can only happen a few times before you eventually have a product that's not really recyclable anymore. The only materials that are truly recyclable are metal and glass. Okay? Plastic and even paper. It's like we have quality writing paper, you recycle it, it becomes photocopying paper. It's not what we call virgin recycling or paper. And then it becomes cardboard, and then it can become toilet paper, tissue paper, paper towels. And then nobody recycles paper towels, right? Those just kind of go into a landfill. You can actually compost those, did you know that? You can actually put your napkins and stuff like that out in compost. So we could eventually put it back where it belongs. All right. I could go on and on about this. I just want to mention a couple of other things. I want to get to, again, this slide. We talked about recycling, reducing. Reducing is really important. They asked a question there. Do you guys know where the raw materials for plastics come from? You know what plastics are made out of? Anyone? Oil. They're made out of fossil fuels, right? So when people talk about, hey, you know, our fossil fuels are going to run out in like 100 years or whatever, and people are like, oh, that's fine. We'll just get energy from the sun. We'll find other ways, right? And that is important. But you know what? If we run out of oil, we run out of organic chemicals that we can build stuff with. And not only does that mean we can't make plastics, we can't make pharmaceuticals, we can't make a lot of clothing that we wear that's polyester clothing. So it's beyond just, oh, running out of energy and we need to find alternative sources for energy. It's more than that. So again, reducing is important. This is a big one I want to kind of let you guys know about, refusing, right? I mentioned 3 things. I mentioned plastic bags, plastic water bottles, and straws. Here are 3 easy things that you guys can do to kind of help with this problem. And I know it feels like it's a tiny drop in the bucket, right? If you're out at a restaurant, right, and get something to drink, they always give you a straw with it. Refuse the straw. You don't need a straw. You don't drink out of straws at home, right? Most of the time, you just kind of have a glass. You don't need a straw, right? So refuse straws. Refuse plastic bags. Get reusable shopping bags, right? You can buy a few of them. I know they give you that weird look like, oh, when you come in with your reusable bags, because it's not as easy for them. But you're making a huge help with the environment by refusing those, right? Places like Aldi's, you have to pay for the bags. Sam's Club, they don't even have bags. So lots of ways that you can do that. And then water bottles, right? There's a great, and I'll send you the link for this too, plastic water bottle problem, that people think that that water is better coming out of a plastic bottle. And unfortunately, that was the manufacturing companies feeling like that was something they needed to do to boost sales. That's not really the case. So again, lots of other interesting stuff. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate. I'll make sure that you guys have my contact information as things come up. And I'll send you this presentation as well. So if there's anything that I flip through quickly, just to end, I'm going to pick one little thing to end with. It's a 30-second little clip here. You guys have probably seen this. Favorite movie.
So this is really all your fault. You destroyed everything.
Yes. And each day since the Lorax left, I've sat here regretting everything I've done, staring at that word, unless, and wondering what it meant. But now I'm thinking, well, maybe you're the reason the Lorax left that word there.
Me? Why would he leave that for me?
Because unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not.
You guys seen the movie? If you haven't seen it, it's a great, find a little kid to watch it with. Maybe you don't have to watch it with a little person, but it's a great movie because I think it speaks volumes to people not thinking about what's going on beyond the walls of their little world and what they might be doing to the environment beyond. So it's a great movie to watch for that. So again, I hope you guys. I'm really excited to see about the great ideas that you come up with. Don't hesitate as things move forward again to let me know. Yes?
Can you send any reliable links to me also, and then I will pop those up for them to,
Yep.
because that's always the,
I'll send you, and I have a handout, but it's in my office.
okay,
So I have a
send
handout.
a handout, and then,
Yes.
then I can get that up there for them for homework.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Thank you. Let me see here. You guys want to take a little break? Take about 10 minutes. Get up, stretch. Stretch. Do we want to turn this off, Pete?
Yeah.